Hey everybody, welcome back to the Cellar Road podcast. As we approach Victory in Europe Day, celebrated on May 8th in most of Europe, in most of the world, but celebrated on May 7th in Champagne. We'll talk about that in a second. We wanted to highlight both a little bit of history on the region of Champagne that doesn't have anything to do with wine, actually, and also talk about a really delicious bottle of wine, because we don't talk about Champagne unless we talk about really good wine.
No.
So we wanted to kind of dive into a little bit of a kind of a cultural note about a really important region in the wine world that is also really important for the history of the world.
Yeah.
So Anna?
Yeah. Before we get started any further, I'm Anna.
Oh yeah, I didn't
is
introduce us. We're gonna keep this. I'm Adam.
Yes, and we love
That's
champagne.
Anna, and we love champagne, and we love wine, and this is our podcast. Thanks for coming.
Yeah. Cheers.
So now, back to the.
This. Champagne, geographically, is in a very interesting place within Europe. Its location to Paris, but it's also to its borders, its bordering country neighbors, Germany in particular.
Yep.
That makes it incredibly interesting, and both during World War I, which is not a topic we're going to talk about today,
No.
That would require a whole series, a whole conversation to talk about Champagne in World War I as a battleground,
Yes.
as a place where World War I was actively fought. We're talking about World War II in Champagne, where it was not a battlefield, but instead Champagne, the region, was occupied for about 4 years until...
Yeah, so during World War, so as Anna mentioned, during World War I, and that's a whole series of conversation, Champagne was essentially leveled and was turned into battlefield. World War II was interesting because, for two reasons. A, when the Nazis were designing their war plan, they actually saved Champagne because the Nazi leadership loved it so much they didn't want to destroy it. Mm-hmm. So instead of destroying Champagne, they occupied it quickly and essentially turned the region into a forced labor camp. The producers were forced to continue to produce wine, but they weren't allowed to sell it to anybody except for the Germans and Axis powers. And if you resisted the rule of the Weinführer, you were subject to concentration camp deportment, you were subject to imprisonment, or you were subject to being targeted by the Gestapo. And actually, there in Reims, there is a memorial to those killed by the Gestapo during World War II for resisting Nazi rule. Another cool fact is some of the names on that wall are names you'll recognize. So there's a member of the Moet family was killed by the Gestapo for resisting. Some of the major houses did their best to support their region and resist Nazi occupation, while also trying to navigate not getting killed and not getting their employees killed, which was a large, a significant risk to them at the time. So the Champagne region played another huge and important part of World War II. That was initially occupied by the Nazis. Obviously, we know the history of the war and how it ended. What many think happened at the end of the war, when the Red Army marched into Berlin, is that the surrender was signed in Berlin, when in fact the German surrender was signed in France.
Yeah.
So Anna and I last year were lucky enough to be in Reims on Victory in Europe Day, the actual day, which is the day before the Victory in Europe Day that you think of.
May 7th, the day the Champenois celebrate.
The day that the Champenois celebrate Victory in Europe Day, and the day that the initial unconditional surrender was signed in Reims.
Yeah.
We were lucky enough to be there that day. We were lucky enough to go to the museum. The surrender was signed in a local high school in Reims. And we were lucky enough to go into the room where the surrender was signed, which they still have it's still set the same way it was set that day. It is set now. So we were able to lay eyes on the room where it happened, which was really cool and very moving in that moment. So, there are some significant figures who love Champagne and historically loved Champagne that were highly important in World War II. And I'll let Anna talk about the first one, the one we're not drinking, the wine that's named after. Yeah, right.
Yeah, and the first big one is Winston Churchill. He had a great friendship with Paul Roget, to the point when Paul Roget, when it was uncertain as to whether or not it had been destroyed in an attack, Winston Churchill sent a note basically like lamenting and apologizing like for the loss of Paul Roget. But Paul Roget was fine. But due to this deep friendship that Winston Churchill had with Paul Roget, the top cuvée of Paul Roget is the Winston Churchill, which is a really cool piece of history.
Absolutely. Winston Churchill was also one of Paul Roget's best clients.
Yes.
The man went through a case of champagne a day. So, they loved him.
Yeah.
And during Winston Churchill's life, there were times when he and his wife were struggling for money. And there's notes of him lamenting the fact that Clemmy made him economize and drop from 2 cases. He went through a case of champagne a week. But he was lamenting that Clemmy made him drop from 2 cases of Paul Roget a week to 1 because they had to economize.
Okay.
Because they were struggling.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we aren't drinking Paul Roget tonight, but if you can, you should. Paul Roget is a beautiful wine. Their house style is very delicate and effervescent. It's a great aperitif wine.
Yeah.
The Sir Winston Churchill label has a little bit more body to the wine, and it's aged longer. It's always a vintage. I think the last vintage was 13. That's released right now.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so.
Which is a great year for them. It's a beautiful wine. So if you can get your hands on it, I would. I'll share that it's not cheap. $400+ a bottle usually, retail, but worth the price.
Yeah.
A great wine.
Yeah.
And a great house. Tonight we have the privilege of drinking Champagne Dropier's Charles de Gaulle label. So Charles de Gaulle, famous French resistance leader and future leader of the country of France after the war. His country house was near the Drapier family estate, and he loved Drapier. He loved their wine. That's all he served to his guests who visited him at his country house. It was a similar situation. It was a deep friendship with the family, and so they chose to basically create a label of wine in his honor and under his name that closely represented some of his favorite wines that he drank from their house. So this wine is intended to replicate good vintages that Charles de Gaulle loved. And so we're really excited to taste this wine. This wine is not nearly as expensive as the Paul Roget.
No.
Much more accessible for champagne standards.
Yes.
What are we retailing, like 80-ish?
It would fall between like 90 to 100.
Okay, great. So much more accessible price tag, and very well worth the price.
Yeah.
So we'll go into the notes.
Yeah. Immediately on the nose, you can just tell that this is a Pinot Noir
Yeah, I was just
heavy
gonna say.
champagne.
So this is this wine comes to us from what is that region? The weird one by Burgundy.
The Côte de Bar is wrong.
No, Côte de Bar.
Is it Côte de Bar?
Is it Côte de Bar?
It is Côte de Bar. I'm thinking Côte d'Or, which is in Burgundy.
That's where I keep going to. My brain kept saying Côte d'Or.
Yeah.
Okay, we're gonna redo that part. Put your wine down. All right, now we'll go into the notes. Okay, so this wine comes to us from the
Côte de Bar.
Côte de Bar. Côte d'Or is just in my brain. Côte de Bar. So Côte de Bar is actually technically part of Champagne, but it is essentially Burgundy.
It borders Chablis.
Yeah, it borders Chablis. It is primarily, the wines that come out of Côte de Bar are primarily Pinot Noir, and it is very clear when you smell this wine that this is Pinot Noir.
Yeah, it's just red fruits, more like macerated raspberry than cherry leaning.
Delicious. Yeah. So red fruit is the primary driver here. This is a fruity, yet very balanced wine.
Yeah.
It's like fruity, not sweet. And very well balanced, delicious wine.
Yeah, there's a good percentage of Chardonnay in here as well, and you really get that because it's coming in and providing a lot of lift, but also some like really really great minerality and salinity that makes you feel like it could be like Chardonnay that's coming from Chablis.
Yeah, it's interesting because red fruit's what you get, and then you go back and you're like, oh yeah, I taste that Chardonnay in there, and it provides that backbone. It also gives it a little acid, which it needs.
Yes.
Yeah, this wine is very well balanced. It's delicious and
it's very easy drinking.
Very easy drinking.
Which is the hallmark of a good wine.
Yep.
Like you can just take a sip and then take a sip again.
Yes. I would serve that with a whole grain mustard crusted pork tenderloin.
You're going a little bit more sophisticated than I was. I was like, I want a cheeseburger.
Yeah. Ooh, I would. Yeah. Yes. Oh my God.
I want a
cheeseburger would
with
taste
this.
amazing.
Yeah,
with
cheeseburger with this would be incredible.
Oh, yeah. So as we're talking about a Blanc champagne that we're pairing with very kind of hearty food. So that gives you a sense for the body of this wine, how it sits on your palate. It can stand up to pretty hefty flavor. Yeah. Another fun pairing of this would be like a really spicy seafood dish.
Sure.
Like a good ceviche or, like a really nice blackened fish taco with this would be incredible.
Some like mango salsa.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Well, here we go. This isn't a food podcast. We gotta get back on track here.
Yeah, let's talk more about Champagne in World War II.
Yeah.
There were some houses that played really important roles in it. We already brought up Moet.
Yeah.
Moet played a huge and really significant role in Champagne. The person who was running the house was responsible, I believe, for...
He's like the mayor or something, right?
Not the mayor. I don't remember the official title. We can throw it in. No. The official French title of what it is. But he was hugely responsible for the resistance.
Yeah.
Like the resistance in Champagne, and was responsible for coordinating it.
Yep.
So we see Moet playing a huge role there. Another house that played a really significant role is Piper Heidsieck, which turned their cellars into armed storage for the Allies and for the resistance that was there.
Right.
There's a few other houses, a lot of them like hid their best vintages.
Yeah. So yes, absolutely. So remember that Champagne is a UNESCO World Heritage Site for underground winemaking. Their cellars are most of their cellars are housed in crayères, which are chalk caves that the Romans carved when they were building the villages and the cities in Champagne, in today's Champagne. And so during World War I, not to get too far down the weeds, but during World War I, essentially because the surface was just a battleground, was just raised and trenched and death, the citizens of Champagne survived by sealing themselves into the crayères. That is how they got through World War I. During World War II, the houses used the crayères to move arms because they're all connected. Underneath of Reims is just a spider web of connected tunnels and like passages and
30
chambers.
30 to 40 meters deep.
Yes. And so they were able to move things quickly in these passages because these people knew these caves like the back of their hand. This is their family. They've lived there their whole lives. And they were able to build like false walls that looked really old that they would hide their best vintages behind so the Nazis couldn't get their hands on them. Or that's where they would store their arms to resist the occupation. So they didn't go down without a fight.
No.
And they did their best to protect their people, but also protect the heritage of their wine and their best vintages from Nazis, which is not only impressive but valiant, and most of them were successful. There are some cool stories of houses, that we've heard on tours of immediately upon the surrender of the Nazis, they ran down into the cellars and pulled out their 24s and pulled out their best vintages that they'd been hiding from them. Which I think that's fun. So what else about World War II in Champagne?
Well, I mean,
let's talk about the Weinführer.
The Weinführer.
So
yeah,
tell us a little bit about that guy.
So the Weinführer, I might have to look this up. But the Weinführer, there were many different Weinführers. So the Nazis loved a good wine. While Hitler didn't drink, many of his tops loved really, really good wines. There was a Weinführer in Champagne, there was a Weinführer in Burgundy, there was one in Bordeaux, and they were essentially responsible for overseeing production of wine still in these areas, so the Nazis and the Axis powers could continue to enjoy them.
Yeah.
And if people didn't follow them, like we mentioned earlier, they were shot, they were killed, they were sent to concentration camps. There were a few different top people in Champagne who were sent to Dachau, to Buchenwald, and was eventually moved because they didn't follow the Weinführer's directions.
Yeah. Yeah, and I can't remember which German leader, but I mean, one German leader had collected hundreds of thousands of the best bottles of wine in the world in his cellar. I think it was Goebbels had established or assembled this collection of the best wines.
Yeah.
Hundreds of thousands of them in his mountaintop retreat home.
Yeah.
And if anybody has watched Band of Brothers, you've seen this dramatized. But as the Americans were conquering this area, they settled the army unit that the Band of Brothers is based on. Basically occupied his home, his mountain retreat, and found this cellar full of the best wines in the world.
Yeah.
And they were actually able to return a lot of them.
Yes.
To the producers.
Yep.
But these Weinführers literally were just they were just middlemen in the Nazi criminal regime that were responsible for forcing people to make wine and stealing it when they did.
Yeah. But it was also
objectively it's a cool title.
It is a cool. Yes. But it was the Nazis' love of wine that led to their downfall for a few different strategic
there are
points.
some really interesting pieces of history around intelligence gathered on wine. Anna has a very good one.
Yeah. So the Nazis loved champagne. They drank so much champagne that they were forcing the Champenois to continuously produce more because they were just going through so much and stocks were being depleted. Because, there were stories about, you could find bottles of this, of American produced sparkling wine and method Champenois that had the champagne label on it. This has caused no problems now because people still want to put champagne on the label and, legally you can't do that. So there's a whole bunch of fun stuff going on surrounding that. But during World War II, to trick the Nazis into having champagne, other wines made in method Champenois that weren't from Champagne would have champagne written on them, just to kind of help support that. But the Champenois were still responsible for filling orders that would come from the Axis powers and the Nazis in particular. And so what the British did is that they were working with the resistance in Champagne, and they told the Champenois just to pay attention to maybe any unusual orders that would come in that they would have to fulfill. And one day the Champenois got an order for a large supply of champagne, and it needed to be shipped with heat-resistant shipping materials. They didn't know anything other than that. But it was from that they were able to discover that the Nazis were planning on invading the north of Africa, because they needed to take wine where all the top officials were who loved it, but it's really, really hot there, and so they needed to protect the wine. But it was from that information that was passed from the Champenois to British intelligence that they were able to foil the plan that the Nazis were trying to secretly invade the north of Africa.
Yeah, and if you know your World War II history, you know that was an exceptionally bloody campaign for the Nazis and for the Allied powers because it wasn't a surprise.
Yes.
The Allies were ready for them, and that's all to do with a little piece of intelligence that came from Champagne.
Yeah.
Well, Anna, I think we need to rate this wine, and I need a little more of it to do so.
Just sipping and enjoying. So first one, is it a well-made wine?
Is it well-made?
Yes.
Absolutely. This is a Côte de Bar champagne through and through. There are some beautiful producers in Côte de Bar. It's also probably the most accessible region of Champagne right now because it's not well known. So if you can find one, usually on the lower end of a champagne.
Yeah.
This is a beautiful wine.
It's beautiful wine.
Well constructed, beautiful on the nose, allows that sense of where it's from to come through.
Yeah, I think that's an easy star.
Absolutely. 1 star for sure.
Is it worth the price point? I'm hesitant.
Maybe.
Yeah.
There are better wines in Champagne that cost the same amount of money that I'd rather buy. And we showcase this wine, because Drapier is a really popular champagne in France. And
Yes.
if you want to know what you pay attention to what the people who from there drink, and they drink Drapier.
Yeah.
But there are some beautiful producers that have wines that are in this price range. I think of Pierre Paillard. I'd buy Pierre Paillard over this every single day of the week.
Yeah.
All the time.
Yeah.
There's Little Bear in that cooler back there. I'd buy Little Bear and fill every single day of the week, all the time, over this wine. I'd spend a little more to buy the Little Bear.
Yeah.
But I say all that, and then I want to have a cheeseburger with champagne, and I'm going for this,
Yeah.
because the Little Bear ain't going to stand up to that.
No.
The Paillard might.
Yeah.
You get the boozy.
Yeah.
So maybe a half a star.
I think
right?
a half a star. For me, this isn't a champagne that is an obvious one for me. Just strictly given its price point.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's an obvious buy. I think it really depends on the circumstance. Because here's the thing, you can also put the Pierre Paillard with a cheeseburger.
And it's going to taste great.
It's going to taste great,
It's
too.
going to taste great, yeah.
And so this is one where it's I think this is a great champagne.
Yeah.
And I think, if you love really, really rich champagnes.
Yes.
Because this is a really, really rich champagne. We
is.
haven't, talked about that, but it's really nutty. It's really toasty. If this is your style of champagne, this is something you're going to drift towards more over, the Pierre Paillard, which
Absolutely.
isn't as toasty. It's a little bit more fresh, a little bit more vibrant than this guy.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's spot on. So yeah, I think a half star makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is it rare? In the U.S., the Charles de Gaulle label is very rare.
Yes.
So it would achieve that goal of being notable.
Yes.
I also think about cellarability for a non-vintage champagne. I mean, this isn't vintage, is it? No.
It's not vintage.
So this is a non-vintage champagne. You're not cellaring that.
No, this isn't one I would cellar.
I would not.
This is one I would open and drink now.
Mm-hmm.
I think it is beautiful. Like I said, I may just go get a cheeseburger after this.
Truly.
And just enjoy it. So for me, this isn't an ageable wine.
Right.
Mainly because it doesn't have anywhere to go with age. It's not going to get better with age. Age isn't going to serve it.
This is going to piss off some champenois, but it's true. There are non-vintage champagnes that can age.
Yes.
This is not one of them.
This is not one of them.
So rarity, absolutely. Ageability, no. And it's not that, you just don't age these. It's that you can age this. I really wouldn't put this down.
I wouldn't lay this down.
I want to drink this now.
Age isn't going
Age
to
isn't
do
gonna do
anything
anything
to
here.
this.
Yeah.
And that's not a bad thing.
Not at all.
Remember, our rating system is specifically designed towards finding wines that we would throw in our cellars.
Yeah.
And this is a wine I would purchase to drink now for a special occasion. This isn't one I'm wanting to lay down because I don't think it has anywhere to develop.
Correct.
This is drink now.
So
Don't age.
no stars for that one.
No stars.
And then the final one.
That's it. We talked about it. We talked about rarity. We talked
Rarity,
about notability.
Notability, ageability.
Is it well made? Is it
Well
worth the
made.
price?
Oh, worth the price. Oh yeah, we did talk about that. Yeah.
I know. Look at us. It's
So 3.5 star wine.
Yeah.
Not too shabby.
No.
For the one obscure region of Champagne is
Yeah.
where this comes from. So for an obscure region, no significant presence in the U.S.
Mm-hmm.
A wine that's made in a very specific way for a very specific purpose.
Mm-hmm.
It's doing great. And honestly, if somebody pulled this out and put this on the table
I
and
would
said,
not be sad.
hey, can I open this? I would be thrilled that they're gonna.
Yeah.
It's a great wine to drink.
Yeah.
I think for me, it comes down to if I'm looking at this on a retail shelf, stood up next to 10 other wines that are near its price point, am I buying the Drapier? I don't know that I am.
Yeah.
But damn it, if I want a cheeseburger with that wine, I might be.
Yeah.
I might be.
Yeah.
And I might be looking for a Pinot Noir forward champagne
Yeah.
to go with that.
That's
and
super
this might
rich
just hit the
and-
spot, right?
Yeah.
If nothing else, this wine is fun to drink around this time of year, to think about what champagne did during
Yeah.
World War II, during World War I, but during World War II specifically,
Yeah.
and how that region resiliently resisted Nazi rule and came through the other side pretty much intact. I mean, the remarkable thing for me is that they survived World War II for being so close to Paris and so easy to bomb. They came through so well intact, and I think that part of that is that the Germans love champagne, and they said don't touch that. But I think part of it is that those families and those vignerons and those leaders cared about their people, cared about their wine, cared about their houses, and did everything they could to protect them and resist the occupation that they were under.
Yeah.
And so we toast them and we
toast
thank them.
Yeah.
And we say cheers to you.
And cheers.
See you next time.
See ya. Wow.
Wow. As you can see, we're not in our studio today. We're actually filming live to tape on location at the Wine Guild in Charlottesville. It's a locally owned wine shop and buyers club. You should come check it out. And if you do, tell Will we said hello.